this is the story of how I turned this into this on a very, very tight budget. So to start with, here I had the original thing, which was actually 3D printed by a seller on Etsy, and it was about £5, I think, just for the printed object itself. This whole thing, I'm going to be making the 7th Doctor TARDIS key prop replica as cheaply as possible. So I got this for cheap, this 3D print of it for cheap from a seller on Etsy for about £5. I will link their store in the description below. Anyway, what I started doing is I sat about by gently sanding the surface on both the front and the back. Now what this is going to do is it's going to provide tiny little scratches for when we come to paint it. Now the paint is honestly what's going to carry it here. We have the base shape, we just need to paint it, and the paint is going to make it pop and it's going to make it look more like the actual prop. Because at the moment it's the right shape, it's just not really the right look at all. So to start with, I gently sat about sanding the back and the front of the prop here. Now it is important to be quite careful on the front. You don't have to be as careful on the back because it's a lot more rough anyway. But the front you have to be very careful, and the reason I'm doing this is the sandpaper is going to put loads and loads and loads of tiny little scratches on the body of the plastic. Now what that is going to do is when we come to paint it, it's going to allow the paint to actually grip on and grab on and be able to be painted on a lot better than if we didn't do that, because if we didn't do that it just doesn't really go on at all. So your first step, if you want to follow along with this, is to gently sand the front and the back. The more fine your sandpaper, the better result you're going to get, because it's such a small, delicate little prop. But I had just whatever I had to hand. It was quite large, actually, probably a bit too big and not nearly small and fine enough, but it did the job well. Now, once you've sanded it down, we get on to painting. Now, I literally bought these cheap paints here, metallic paints, for £5 from the works, and I bought some cheap paint brushes for £2 from the work. Now, you don't need metallic paint if you have acrylic or any, basically any paint will do. I don't know if watercolors would work, but essentially any paint you want to use will probably do the trick. So here I popped open the silver coloured metallic paint and I'm going to use that and I'm going to mix it with a sort of darker, blacker colour to give it a base coat, because if you see on the actual prop, it is a dark sort of colour. I mean, it's only seen in two stories. It's only seen in Ghostlight and in Survival, and both of them only shows up for a split second. So it's quite a niche, weird little prop, but here I am opening and jetting out, is that the correct term? Some silver paint, and then here I'm doing the same with black paint. Of course I'm covering it with my hands, but I mix the silver and the black together to get quite a dark grey sort of colour. Again, if you've got a dark grey paint, just use that. You know, really it's just about, if you look at an image of the prop, just try and mix the colours and match that as best you can. Now we get on to actually painting it, and as you can see it is quite streaky, and that's just because there'd have been areas that haven't been sanded down as well, so the paint's not sticking as well. But we're going to do multiple layers. I ended up doing 2 layers of this base colour. If you have primer, you could spray some primer on it. That would make the whole thing work a lot better. Again, if you're doing this on a budget like I was, you want to get it done for as low a budget as possible, just do that. So basically just cover the entire thing now in this dark grey sort of paint for your base coat. The thing is with this, you can be quite generous with it, but you don't want to be too generous with it because it's quite a prop with some small fine little details. You don't want to be basically putting a load of paint on to cover up those details. You want to be putting enough to cover it, but not so thick that it actually takes away from the detailing of the prop. So you can see what I'm doing here is I'm doing a sort of mixture of brushing it normally, and then if you dab it on up and down, it creates a sort of almost lumpy sort of pattern on it, and that is actually going to be really good for when we come to weathering it. So you could, if you want to, you could streak your first coat, dab your second coat on, and that will give it a sort of you have to be very, very fine and gentle with it, like I'm doing there. I'm not really being fine or gentle, but you get the point. And what that will do is it will sort of give little lumps and bumps when the paint dries, and when you then do your weathering bits, that will give that bit more, texture and stuff to stick onto. And this is how it was when it was still wet, and as you can see, I've got to put the lumpy little texture on it there, and you see it's not completely covered it. And this is now me coming in to do the second coat of paint after the first one's dried, or at least mostly dried. And you just got to get in and you just got to paint over any bits that you've perhaps missed or didn't stick on as well. Now there'll be more paint in there, the paint can stick to more paint rather than the paint just trying to stick to plastic. And again, just go over both coats, cover up any bits that you've missed, and then do the dab effect after the fact to get it covered, completely covered in this dark sort of grey, the front, the back, and the edges. And on the back as well, you really don't have to be that careful with it at all. You can just basically lather it on, as long as you don't put too much in the little grooves on the back and the little constellation, so that either the paint will basically never dry, or you'll completely fill it up. But just lather it on the back, sort of like I'm doing here. Okay, now I realised I didn't actually show the weathering process really at all. But what you do is you can mix up a few different types of paint. If you have a sort of dark colour, or you know, like a browns and blacks, something, you know, which is darker, or maybe than the original paint, even though the original paint is quite dark, you lather that on. You just completely coat the entire thing, then you wet your brush and you run that over, so you've got wet black paint over the entire thing. You then get a piece of kitchen roll or towel or sponge or something which is going to suck it up, and you dab that all along the top and you can wipe it. You have to do this once your base coat is completely dry, otherwise you're just going to pull your base coat off. And you do that, and what that will do is, I'll show you. Here you can see around the sort of indents, there's a lot darker bits. There's almost like there's a black sort of outline to the details, and that will make the details pop a whole lot more, because what it's going to do is the towel is going to soak up any of the black bits that are on the top, but not the bits that are in the very grooves and edges. And then you do that with blacks and browns and other colours of grey, and it sort of gives it the effect of dirt and weathered, and it's been dirted and weathered and, you know, worn down over the years and adventures through time and space. This is done now. Look at that, it's got the darker bits and the lighter bits. A few little browner bits look like dirt. Really, really nice. And there you have it. Here is the finished prop. As I said, it's quite very simple to make. You just base coat it, dab the thing on, then just weather it. Very, very quick, very, very simple, and the whole total came to about £12, including the initial 3D print of it, the shipping, the paints, and the brushes. Came to about £12, I believe. So yeah, there you go.